Hello and welcome to coverage of the Magic Online Championship. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas. We've got Kenji Egashira in the red zone as well. He'll be bringing you non-feature match game coverage after. And it looks like we're just about underway here. We've got Jerry Thompson versus our defending champion here, Magnus Lanto.
This matchup's actually pretty tough for Jerry. It should be interesting to see how it plays out, but Magnus is on lands. So this is one of those extremes of the format I was talking about, where his plan is to use Exploration and Mana Bond to just put tons of lands into play, and then Life from the Loam to keep dredging life, getting back lands, play more lands. And his win condition is, you see Dark Depths there with a Thespian Stage. So,
okay,
because the combination of those two cards is you copy the Dark Depths with the stage, keep the stage as because of the legendary rule, and then it sees itself as a Dark Depths with no counters on it, and all of a sudden you've got a Merit Lage token.
The 2020 flyer. Yeah. Now this is an interesting start here, though, for Jerry, as he's got a Force of Will in his hand, which he probably thinks is going to be good, and he's going to immediately snap off this Exploration, it looks like. But the cool thing is he's got that Deathrite Shaman, and that thing can do some work against this deck, right?
It can eat Life from the Loam, which is the critical part.
Yeah.
It can also kind of tax Punishing Fire, though in this case, Magnus is going to be able to kill the Deathrite with Punishing Fire, presumably. So this matchup in general is tough for blue decks. Part of the reason you play lands is because it's very good at grinding out these mid-range blue decks, which is what Jerry's playing. Shardless Sultai, where he's trying to combine Shardless Agent with Ancestral Vision. You cascade into Vision and get to play it. Mm-hmm. And just gets card advantage that way and mana advantage off Deathrite, and then you end up wasting their land. It's just a very attrition-y deck, and Magnus's deck has very few targets for almost all of Jerry's angles of attack. But if Jerry's able to stop Life from the Loam from happening, then the lands deck loses a lot of power. And actually, Magnus doesn't have a mana-producing land left. He's got 3 lands in his hand.
Wow.
None of them produce mana. Magnus might actually end up in a spot where he doesn't get to cast any more spells.
And he's now going to be facing 2 Deathrite Shamans as well.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, this is the right kind of start for Jerry. He's able to cut Magnus off of mana, even the Verdant Catacombs off the top there. Magnus is going to go for a gamble, and his options are really limited here because he can get any card in his deck, but even the normal target, which is Life from the Loam, not going to be very effective against Deathrite Shaman, and he can't even cast it. He only has 1 mana-producing land.
Wow.
And some versions of the deck play Urborg, but in this case, it does not look like Magnus is. We've got the deck list here, because that would be a way to make it so all your mazes and Dark Depths start tapping for mana.
Right. So he went and got a Taiga there, and here comes the gamble.
So he can get a second mana source here, but Jerry is just going to kind of try to choke him on mana and just counter the gamble, because so much of what Magnus gets is uncounterable by Force of Will.
Now, the thing I'm seeing here, though, right, is so Jerry has done a nice job of keeping Magnus at bay in the early stages here. But what does the end game look like for Thompson? Like, how does he end up winning this game? Is it just with Deathrites, or does he have
Deathrite? Jace the Mind Sculptor. Jerry's got 2 of those. Is a pretty effective win condition because he can eventually just ultimate. Because see, Maze of Ith, it's again one of those oddball lands that doesn't tap for mana, but it can untap an attacking creature and make it not deal damage.
Right.
Maze means that attacking with Tarmogoyfs is just not as effective as it would be otherwise. But Jerry's win condition is really just stopping Magnus from doing his thing.
Okay.
Because eventually Jerry can have like 4 creatures and play an attack past Maze, or have a Jason play and go ultimate. Because Jerry's deck, it's got its own engines. It's able to draw a lot of cards, and here Jerry is playing it very safe.
It looks like he's going to Thoughtseize away the Punishing Fire here, which is going to keep one of his Deathrite Shamans alive.
And it's also making it so he can't cast the Shardless Agent this turn, but I think he just wanted to make sure to cut Magnus off from having any potential way to get out of this. So Magnus is on 1 mana producing land, needs to draw ideally Grove of the Burn Willows pretty quickly here, but even then, because Grove taps, gains Jerry a life, and it triggers those Punishing Fires, but Jerry with Deathrite Shaman is going to be able to eat those out of the graveyard pretty quickly.
Kind of interesting. Jerry does go ahead and attack with the 2 Deathrites, and Magnus could just let that happen.
Yeah, but Magnus has a much more amazing play if he wants. He can use the mazes to stop the damage from coming in.
He could have, but it does untap the Deathrites.
Yeah, and he chose not to. So
wow.
Kind of interesting play from Jerry, because he just gave Magnus the option.
Yes.
And there's a Grove. Immediately Punishing Fire comes back, and I don't want to say it, but Jerry actually got potentially punished for that attack.
He really did.
Because if both Death Rights were untapped, he could have used one to exile a land, add mana, and then used the other to eat the Punishing Fire out of the graveyard.
Wow.
So Jerry now has his option of playing Tarmogoyf for Shardless Agent. Shardless Agent is a more appealing play because the Tarmogoyf can't get past Maze, so I would expect to see Jerry just cast the Shardless Agent and hopefully hit an Ancestral Visions. Oh, it's a Tarmogoyf. This still stacks up a lot of attackers. So, we keep talking about these Mazes of Ith, and there are two of them, but right now, Jerry's got enough attackers here that he could potentially attack past it, but...
Yeah, that Punishing Fire.
Well, that's going to be big. Running lands means now Magnus can cast Punishing Fire, kill a Deathrite, and then immediately get it back with Grove, which means that he's actually got it set up to next turn do the same thing and never have it live in the graveyard long enough to get Deathrighted.
Wow. Now, it's funny because you were saying, wow, Magnus really needed to draw a couple of lands in a row, specifically mana producers, but he is playing, 30-something lands?
He's got a lot of lands in his deck. Looks like 33 lands.
There you go.
Yeah, the original deck, the first time I saw the deck many years ago, had 43 lands, but there are enough cards that it needs to play that number has gone down, but it's still many more than most decks. As a member of the Community Super League, where would you say these decks fall in the Brewmaster category?
I think that both of these decks are about on par with a few of the decks we played in this Community Super League last night.
Without naming tribes.
Right.
So Jerry is still pressuring Magnus's graveyard, making future Life from the Loams worse, but that Punishing Fire is going to be able to take out that Deathrite. Jerry's going to be able to hit for 2 a turn with the Shardless Agent plus the 2 Goyfs until, of course, Punishing Fire takes out Shardless Agent. And then it really comes to whether Jerry can draw enough Wastelands. If Jerry draws a bunch of Wastelands in a row, then he's going to be able to take out those Mazes of Ith and start attacking with Goyfs that are out of the range of Punishing Fire. But Jerry has 3 Wastelands in his decks, and he's already used one of them. Crop Rotation, another powerful card in the lands deck. It lets Magnus sack any land to go get another land, and because he's got so many different, important lands in his deck, it's going to let him assemble like the Thespian Stage if he's looking to make a 20/20.
Yeah.
Potentially get another Maze of Ith if he's feeling like he's pressured here.
Yeah, Tabernacle could be good here.
Yeah, the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale even gives all creatures an upkeep of 1 colorless mana or they're destroyed, and so that'll force Jerry to spend all his mana keeping those Goyfs around. Yeah,
it does look to me though like just getting a Merit Lage going might just be the line here. Oh, hello.
Yeah, there's Thespian Stage.
Just through the Thespian Stage. I guess Magnus agreed with me, or his deck did in any case.
Yeah, Magnus's deck is cooperating here, and he's choosing to do this main phase to play around a Wasteland because Wasteland does disrupt the combo, and he's under the what looks like correct assumption that Jerry is not going to be able to kill the 20/20 before it flies over and kills Jerry.
Well, he bought himself a turn here.
Yeah, Baleful Strix is a really cool card. Jerry's going to play it. He's going to draw a card, and it's got flying and Death Touch. But the token is indestructible.
Right. So the problem here is, does Jerry have any answers to the Merit Lage?
He does. He's got 2 copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Okay.
So if he were to draw land Jace and chump block, he might be able to live, except Magnus has Punishing Fire. So he's just going to Punishing Fire down the Baleful Strix.
All right. So that is going to do it there for game number 1. You can take a look at our players as they sideboard, and you can see them up on the top of your screen there as well.
And, when I look at sideboards, it's more on Jerry because I think the matchup is worse for him to begin with. Like, I would expect Magnus to not sideboard very much at all. He's got, his sideboard is mostly aimed at stopping quick combo decks. He's got Sphere of Resistance and Thoughtseize. It's more like, does Jerry have cards like Life from the Loam? Does Jerry have Graveyard Disruption? And Jerry doesn't have a ton of these. Again, I think this is a pretty tough matchup for the Sultai deck.
Yeah, it does kind of, you kind of get the vibe that, Jerry's taking, well, he's taking one of the more mid-range style decks here, right? And he's facing one of the more extreme fringe decks. And you talked about this on the keys, before this, of he's going to need to have a plan for these edge case decks. And yeah, the one that Magnus decided to pick is a pretty tough one to deal with.
And part of it is that Jerry's deck is, one of the more controlling decks. It's trying to attrition out its opponents. He's not going to kill Magnus by turn 4 or 5. That's just very difficult for him to do. So given that, he needs to figure out a way to stop the game plan of the lands deck.
All right, looks like we're into game 2 here, Luis. So let's take a look at their openers there. I do see a Tabernacle. I see a Mox Diamond up there for
a good hand for both players. Jerry's going to be able to play a turn 1 Deathrite because he played Uprooted Delta. It's going to produce mana on turn 2. He also has Force of Will for Magnus's first play. Magnus has a very explosive hand. He's got
his hand's insane.
Mox Diamond plus Life from the Loam, and that is exactly what that deck wants to open on. So the Deathrite Shaman makes that a little less appealing, but it's still a powerful hand. Magnus also has the ability to just play a Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale and start taxing that Deathrite Shaman.
Now, is Jerry playing around Wasteland here by getting a swamp?
Yeah, that's why he would do that. Because he's got such a landlight deck, he's worried that Magnus' Eternal Wasteland would stop him from playing any spells.
That's a tough decision, though, right? I mean, look at his hand.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's got a Shardless Ancient in his hand. He just got basic swamp.
Part of the what would lead Jerry down that path is Deathrite is pretty safe. I mean, it gets eventually Punishing Fire, but for the first couple turns, you can rely on it, and that produces any color. So he's feeling pretty good about that. Plus, Sylvan Library and Shardless Agent both draw you into more cards, and so that will help Jerry find more lands.
Ooh, you seeing what I'm seeing here, Luis?
Oh, there's a Tireless Tracker.
Tireless Tracker, a scout. Huh?
This card is this card is making its presence felt on every format. We're seeing it here in Legacy. Definitely seeing play in Standard. I suspect we will see it in Modern.
Can take a look at Shardless Agent here. This is Shardless Agent, one of the cards that the deck's named after, actually.
Yeah, it's Shardless Sultai because of the combination of Cascading, so playing a spell that costs less than it from the top of your deck, and Ancestral Visions, which cost 0. So. All right, double Mox Diamond turn. This is a setup for a Life and Loam, and you see what Magnus has done here. He's going to Life and Loam back 2 lands, and then he's going to immediately cycle the Tranquil Thicket and dredge back Life and Loam. So he's able to, or at least, even though it gets forcible, he's still able to do this. He's able to avoid a Deathrite Shaman. He can actually just keep the mana up and cycle Tranquil Thicket in response to Deathrite if he wants, but it's safer to do it beforehand.
And here's that Tabernacle doing its thing.
So thanks to Tabernacle, now Jerry has to lose some amount of his creatures or spend all his mana. So Magnus is feeling pretty confident that he's going to be able to use Tranquil Thicket to protect a Life from the Loam if in the event that Jerry tries to exile it with Deathrite Shaman's black ability.
Yeah, that's a super important interaction. Those cycle lands, we call them.
Yeah. Is that because they cycle?
Well, no, that's not why it's important. That's why they're important.
Yes.
It's the fact that you can do it whenever you want.
Yeah, the fact that you can do it whenever you want, and it's a card drawing engine. If you end up with a couple of those combined with a Life and Loam, there's 2 Tranquil Thickets in Magnus's deck, and you're able to just keep going off with Life and Loam, getting it back and getting it back.
So what is going to happen here, though? This is just a tough spot for Jerry, right? He just decided to let his Shardless Agent die. So that's gone.
And pay for both Deathrites. He drew a land, so he's going to be able to play a land. And this is exactly what Magnus is trying to set up. Jerry's going to potentially go for killing the Life or exiling the Life from the Loam. He's got to think that Magnus has got a cycle land in hand, and he can't feel great about it, but I don't know that he's got a better option than attempting to exile it. And part of the reason that Magnus wanted to wait there is that it wastes a lot of Jerry's mana.
Sure. Okay. Well, interesting. So Jerry's actually going to tap the Deathrite to get rid of a Dark Depths and then use his other Deathrite with that mana to try to take care of Life from the Loam. And
And
Jerry, like you said, he's going to have known that this was a distinct possibility, and he's going to be probably pretty bummed to see that it was actually the case.
Yeah, that was the crucial interaction of the game. Cycling Tranquil Thicket to get back to life in the loam, because that now gives Magnus the ability to dredge a second loam, get back a bunch of lands, and Jerry's still, getting locked under this tabernacle at Pendrell Vale, which is forcing him to spend 2 of his. He has 5 total mana if he uses his Death Right, but spending 2 of it every single turn on Tabernacle is not pleasant.
And here we go. The engine begins. So we see Life from the Loam resolves, and that's going to bring those 3 lands into hand for Magnus. And things do not get prettier here from Jerry Thompson's side.
No, though what Magnus is doing now does give Jerry the opportunity to exile both of Magnus's Life from the Loams.
It'll cost him a Death Right to do so?
Unless he draws a land, yeah. So, but the safer play from Jerry's perspective is to just untap Tabernacle on the stack, use a Death Right to exile Life from the Loam, pay for the other Death Right, and then use that surviving Death Right to exile the other Life from the Loam. Except there's now 3 Life from the Loams in the graveyard.
Are there 3 now?
So
yeah,
Magnus is just not that worried about that, even though Jerry can start making headway here if he wanted to.
Yeah. Well, there's a Wasteland for Jerry, which could buy him a little bit of time, but pretty tough when your opponent has 3 Life from the Loams in your graveyard and you're staring down at a Wasteland.
Yeah, using Wasteland is just not going to get Jerry that much room here. He could Wasteland the Tabernacle and then not have to pay for Death Rights for a turn, but it's not like that will really advance his game plan all that much. Whereas Magnus his deck's really firing on all cylinders here. He's getting back a bunch of lands. He's making his land drop every turn. At some point, he's going to be able to start cycling Tranquil Thicket to draw cards. He can also play a Tireless Tracker and start accumulating clues and has enough mana to really make use of those.
All right, it looks like Jerry's just going to try to get rid of the Tabernacle here by wastelanding it and then using his Deathrite Shaman to take it out. He also has a Sylvan Library. So he's basically freed up his mana here and set himself up with a card draw engine. Okay.
Sylvan Library is a very good card against the lands deck. It, if you want to take a look at it, it lets Jerry draw 2 additional cards. So he draws 3 cards on his draw step. Then he has to put 2 of them back. Or he can pay 4 life per card to keep them. So because his life total is not under pressure at all, he can use at 16 right now, all self-inflicted. He can use Sylvan Library to draw 2 to 3 extra cards without really worrying too much about any consequences.
And there's at least a Shardless Agent in the graveyard as well, so Jerry can gain a little bit of life if it comes to that from his Deathrite and maybe get an extra card out of the deal. It's a plan.
So Magnus might be looking to play Tireless Tracker here because he's got a land drop. He can actually play Windswept Heath, get a clue, sack it, get another land, get another clue, and then even if Jerry does end up killing it, which he does have a Abrupt Decay in hand, having 2 clues means that Magnus is just drawing so many cards here. Like he's not even keeping up with Sylvan Library, he's getting ahead of Sylvan Library despite the fact that his deck is not playing at that many spells.
Take a look at the new edition here, Tireless Tracker.
Yeah. Landfall, investigate, and then when you sack a clue, put a +1/+1 counter on it. I don't think it's going to be attacking very much. I think Tireless Tracker is going to die to that Abrupt Decay fairly quickly, but again, it made 2 clues, which already gives Magnus 2 extra cards. He's going to be able to use one of them right here. Okay,
interesting. There's a Pithy Needle now for Jerry. Is there anything that he can name that matters here?
There are a number of cards which it has an effect because Pithy Needle is not like Firex and Revoker. You can name lands and it just stops non-mana activated abilities. So Jerry's going to be able to, if he wanted, he could name Clue. That's that will stop one of the clues because Magnus will presumably draw a card in response to the needle being cast. He could also name Tranquil Thicket. The cycling ability is something that can be prevented with Needle. He can name Thespian Stage. So he's got a number of decent options here, depending on what he's most afraid of. These Deathrites are actually... now that Jerry was able to get rid of the Tabernacle, free up his mana, draw extra cards on Sylvan, Jerry, you saw he paid the full 8 life there. He went from 16 to 8.
Yeah.
I think Jerry might be...
Is he starting to stabilize this situation?
Looks like he might be. Actually, it looks like you can't name Clue, the chat's telling me, because it's not actually a card. which is
Right.
interesting.
Must be a card, yeah.
Well, the good thing is Jerry wasn't going to anyway because it would not have been, the best play. But it's in fact not even an option.
All right, well, we get to find out what Jerry's going to name here with this pithy needle.
My guess right now is either Tranquil Thicket or Thespian Stage. One reason to name Thicket, and see Magnus cracking a clean response just in case.
Maybe he wasn't sure.
Maybe he's listened to the commentary. Naming Thespian Stage is the safer long-term play because Dark Depths is such a threatening card.
Yeah, that's what he named.
Yeah. Naming Tranquil Thicket gives you the immediate advantage here, but with now 3 Death Rights, Jerry's actually able to fight Life from the Loam pretty effectively. There's only 1 Tranquil Thicket there, and so Magnus has to be very careful about how he uses his Life from the Loams. And unfortunately for Magnus, having only 1 Tabernacle in his deck, which, I mean, it is legendary, so that is the normal number you would play, it means that because it's exiled, he's no longer able to really pressure Jerry's mana like he was a couple turns ago. So he can keep dredging Life from the Loam, but there aren't that many lands that are active. Hitting Punishing Fire is interesting, but again, triple Death Right. Death Right's Jerry's best card in this situation. It really does not only provide a clock by eating spells, but by eating lands, it really disrupts Magnus's ability to kind of get his game plan into
And we
action.
haven't really seen Wasteland from Magnus, right? I mean, isn't that one of the core engines to this deck is that you can start Wastelanding and getting them back with Life from the Loam?
That is how Magnus is going to pressure Jerry's mana base aside from Tabernacle. And yeah, we haven't seen any Wastelands here.
It's kind of weird.
There are 4 in the deck, so
Yeah.
it's going to be a couple turns before we see those at the very least. Do you think Magnus is going to go
Is he on the long game?
for the pay 3 mana to remove an ice counter from Dark Depths?
It could be.
I
don't think it'll work.
I don't think that's his game plan because it's gonna take 30 mana and something like 7 or 8 turns at the very least.
Yeah, kind of cool for Jerry. He's got Pithy Needle on Thespian Stage, and so far Magnus has 3 in his hand.
Yeah, it's funny. Jerry named that, and then Magnus immediately drew 2 more.
Yeah.
So
Jerry's down to 7 life here, so he's can't just keep drawing extra cards off of Sylvan, but he
at least
could
not
draw
without
one.
using Death Rights to gain some life. There's a Tireless Tracker lurking in the graveyard as well,
Yeah.
Shardless Agent.
Yeah.
And here we see another combo with Jerry's deck. Let's say he doesn't care about getting Wasteland right now, which is a reasonable assumption. He could stack, he could Sylvan, he could put back the Brainstorm, then put back Wasteland on top of it, and then cast Shardless Agent, cascade past the Wasteland, play the Brainstorm, draw more cards, put more cards back, and end up in a pretty good spot. Jerry can also pay life if he would like to keep Shardless Agent and Wasteland, and then cast it and just hit Brainstorm. He could have also paid life to keep Brainstorm and Shardless Agent and put the Wasteland back, but Sylvan Library is an incredibly fun card to play with. It just gives you so many good options.
So he's going to go for Shardless Agent into Brainstorm right now.
So he sees Thoughtseize, Tarmogoyf, and Creeping Tar Pit. Tar Pit's interesting. Tarmogoyf's very good here because Magnus doesn't have a Mazavith.
Right.
I mean, he has one in hand. Jerry doesn't know that, but he doesn't have a Mazavith in play unless it got loamed back. And that Wasteland, even though Jerry isn't past the point where Wasteland's going to be effective mana disruption, Wasteland against Mazavith, every time you waste, gives you an extra hit with your Tarmogoyf. And Tarmogoyf's pretty gigantic. Shardless Agent is an artifact, too, and there's one in the graveyard, as well as enchantment from exploration. So we've got, looks like a 6/7 Goyf here.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Tarmogoyf's at 6/7.
And Jerry now has enough creatures in play that Magnus is on a pretty quick clock. And again, those Deathrite Shamans are making it so Life from the Loam is a less effective plan than it would be otherwise. Plus, you do have to give up a draw step to dredge Life from the Loam. So in order to do that, you give up a draw, and then you get to cycle Tranquil Thicket, but that just replaces your draw. So Magnus doesn't see that many new cards, assuming that lands are in general not what he's looking for.
Dark Depths ticks down to 9.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Wasteland from Magnus.
There's a Wasteland.
Can also do something like take Jerry off of his own Wasteland, but that doesn't help that much because if Magnus had an exploration out and was able to play multiple lands per turn, I could see going Wasteland your Wasteland, get Wastelanded in response, then play Mazavith and protect from the Goyf. Right now, Wasteland's not really an effective way to do that. You could spend a whole extra turn doing that, But next turn, Magnus is getting attacked for 8, and there's 3 Deathrights untapped there. And that's actually a lot of pressure.
Wow. So Magnus is going to kick things off by cycling a Tranquil Thicket here. Oh, he had Exploration.
Well, he hit the Exploration, so we might see that play of Wasteland Your Wasteland, play Maze of Ith here.
Wow.
And remember, the Needle named Thespian Stage, so that's why Magnus isn't playing any of those. Otherwise, the combination of Thespian Stage and Dark Depths does immediately produce a 20/20. And it's kind of interesting interaction. It definitely gave Dark Depths a whole new amount of relevance. It used to just be Vampire Hexmage, but now Thespian Stage lets you copy Depths. Then you have a Depths with no ice counters in play, so immediately the Merit Lage token is freed from the ice.
Yep. Yeah, and it fits so well in this deck. Just being a land means that it's eligible to get back from life from the loam. You can get it with crop rotation. It just fits so beautifully in here.
And here we see that sequence. Magnus is going to Wasteland. Jerry's Wasteland. Jerry's, in response, going to Wasteland, presumably Grove of the Burn Willows or Dark Depths. And then Magnus is going to play his Maze of Ith, which is now safe.
And that's going to keep the massive Tarmogoyf at bay, which was going to chew up Magnus's life total in short order here. Magnus is up a game. He won game 1 pretty impressively, and Jerry's fought the fight here. I have to say, in the early stages, it looked like Magnus may be off to just the quick 2-0 start, but not so easy.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting flip-flop where game 1, it looked like Jerry was very advantaged. Magnus only had 1 mana-producing land. At one point, he had 0 mana-producing lands, but Magnus went land, and immediately won. And then this game, Jerry looked like he's very far behind, but he's able to get back into it with the combination of Wasteland and Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, 3 Deathrights is really insane here, too, because you can see that the line you were talking about in the last game, Luis, involved Deathrite Shaman gobbling up life from the loams, but Jerry's just eating all the lands.
Yeah,
he's just like you.
That's what just happened.
Yeah.
You saw Magnus play life from the loam, and in response, Jerry used 2 of his Deathrite Shamans to exile Tranquil Thicket and Wasteland.
Yeah, he did still get Dark Depths out of the deal, but Jerry can live with that, I suppose. He's going to get in for a couple of damage here with Shardless Agent. The Tarmogoyf's going to be held at bay by Maze of Ith.
It got lost in the maze, but you may as well attack there because it gets your Shardless Agent through. The triple Deathrite Shaman is going to potentially deal. Looks like he could even deal 6 damage end of turn by exiling 3 life from the loams if Jerry wants. And here, that Needle really
Wow.
impacting the game. There's a Thespian Stage that's unusable right now.
He'd be facing down a 20/20. And he just gobbled up a life from the loam now.
And even though
And another one.
Land is very good at having explosive starts and getting its engine going, in a situation like this, it doesn't have a single card. Like, it doesn't have one card it can draw that really gets it back into it. There's not one sweeping card. So, whereas Jerry's deck can always Shardless Agent into Ancestral Visions.
Wow, so Jerry just exiled all 3 life from the loams of Magnus Lanto, and things are looking great for Jerry Thompson.
He's going to be able to Shardless Agent one of those Thought Seizes if he wants, but he may just want to activate Creeping Tar Pit and attack and then have a bunch of Deathrights up.
Yeah, he has lethal here, right? See,
pretty.
Tarmogoyf gets taken out 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
It looks like he's 1 short because there's no instant or sorcery.
He's only got Exploration and a couple of creatures here. Take a look at Deathrite. Clearly the all-star in this game from Jerry's perspective.
Yeah, Deathrite Shaman, all of the abilities are very relevant. The exiling a creature to gain 2 may be the least relevant, but the other ones...
He's actually got Force of Will down here also.
Yeah, I guess Jerry's got his own Force of Will, so it looks like actually Jerry's going to be able to do it.
Yeah, down to 2 and then just get rid of the Force. Or the Brainstorm or the Abrupt Decay. And that does it. Jerry Thompson, well done. Takes down game 2. Magnus Lanto, again, a really good start there.
Yeah, and had Jerry not had his Abrupt Decay, that Tireless Tracker would have, I think, gotten out of control.
Yeah.
But the fact that Jerry had, the lone Abrupt Decay that game, and, most often used to kill something like Exploration, it did take out Tireless Tracker, and that was really effective.
That was a sweet game to watch. We got to see both decks kind of do what they want to do, but Jerry ended up edging him out there with some nice sideboard cards. And the Pithy Needle, I mean, that was a long time ago that he cast that card and named Thespian Stage. It didn't seem like, that was more like a long-term, insurance plan. And boy, did it pay off for Jerry there, because he would have been facing down some Merit Lage action for sure.
And you see in sideboarding, Jerry actually brought back in more Abrupt Decays. Now that you know that you're facing down some number of tireless trackers, then Abrupt Decay becomes more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And Grafdigger's Cage, despite being graveyard disruption in general, like it's very effective against something like Dredge, for example, it's not as effective against the lands deck. It doesn't it doesn't interact with the cards that you care about from the graveyard, because you're not casting spells from the graveyard when you're using Punishing Fire or Light from the Loam.
Looks like Jerry's gonna go down to 0 Baleful Strix here.
Yeah, Baleful Strix. Now that there's nothing all that important to trade with, it's not really what Jerry's looking for.
All right, let's get back underway here. Game number 3 in round 1 here at the Magic Online Championship. Ooh, an exploration to kick things off for Magnus Lanto. This could be an explosive start for him. How does the rest of his hand look?
It's missing a Life from the Loam. It does have Crozen Grip. That's a sideboard card brought in to take care of Needle for sure. And Magnus is probably going to start by cycling Tranquil Thicket. He has a crop rotation, but given the amount of lands he has in play, he's not really in a position quite yet to crop rotate for something like, say, Thespian Stage.
Okay, so he's going to cycle the Thicket. Finds his own copy of Pithy Needle, and he sees a nice little card to name right there with Deathrite.
Yeah, naming Deathrite is effective also because Deathrite's first ability is not technically a mana ability. So you can actually prevent that from being used.
So it shuts it off completely.
Right, because of the way Deathrite works, it's not exiling as part of a cost. It exiles a target land, and then if it does, produces a mana. So you see Needle can stop activated abilities as long as they're not mana abilities, and in this case, Deathrite Shaman, despite producing mana, it's actually not a mana ability.
And there we go. Deathrite Shaman has been named, so this is going to kind of put the ball in Jerry's court to find another, again, Abrupt Decay looking pretty good in the matchup here, as it's been able to target some pretty key permanents. Fortunately for Jerry, he doesn't have one currently.
No, Jerry's in a pretty good shape, though, because he's got a couple things he's want to set up here. One is the combo of Brainstorm, put back Ancestral Visions, then cast Shardless Agent and flip Ancestral Visions. The other is that he can just play a Sylvan Library, and that ensures he hits his third land drop here, or at least makes it a lot more likely. Also, look at what Magnus has going on. He does want to crop rotate into Thespian Stage, but doesn't have quite enough mana to activate it in the same turn. And he looks like he's just gonna get rid of his excess Dark Depths. Now he untaps and then plays it.
Right.
So actually,
this is just huge pressure here.
Actually, because Jerry doesn't have a Wasteland, this is a Merit Lage token right away. So Jerry actually might not be able to deal with this.
Right. He's just under massive heat here. Does he have any way for this amount of mana to get rid of a Merit Lage?
Well, because the Deathrite's named, Jerry doesn't have a Jace, so it looks like actually Jerry might just be dead right away.
I think he's
that
just
was
dead.
That was a very fast draw from Magnus.
Insane. He even drew the Abrupt Decay that we were just talking about so that he could free up his Deathrite Shaman, but it doesn't look like it's going to matter here. Magnus Lanto makes a 2020 Flying Indestructible Merit Lage token.
Yeah, Flying Indestructible 2020.
Yeah.
Thanks to Exploration, Crop Rotation, and Dark Depths.
Yeah, and that's one of the big highlights to this land deck that Magnus has chosen to play, is that it can be tough to interact with, and the power ceiling's pretty high here. A 2020 is pretty insane.
Yeah, I'm trying to look. Is there anything that Jerry can Shardless Agent into that will deal with that? And
it looks like he's going to Brainstorm here, so he might have something in mind. Though
got a lot of Ancestral Visions and lands.
That's not going to do it. Yeah, 3 Ancestral Visions, and he found a couple of lands as well with the Brainstorm here. You can put a couple of those back and shuffle them away, but he's currently scheduled to take a whopping 20 damage in the air.
is this the?
I like that.
the Abrupt Decay?
I like that. Kid's got spirit.
Yeah.
He's going to go down swinging. You see a big smile there from Jerry, but he did not win his first round here at the Magic Online Championship. That one goes to Magnus Lanto. We see the handshake, something that you don't normally get on Magic Online, but that's good. All right, so it looks like We've got Kenji Egashira ready over at the red zone to bring us some of the other games that we didn't get a chance to see in the feature match. Kenji, what do you got for us?
Thanks, Luis and Marshall. I have some sweet ones queued up. The very first one I have is between Sam Black and Niels Norlander. Sam is on Ad Nauseam Tendrils, while Niels is on a Sneak and Show deck. I actually have the deck and the game pulled up now, so let's go through this game one between Sam and Niels. Things start off rather slowly, but preordained from Niels kind of setting up. Sam with a Cabal Therapy. It actually names Grizzlebrand right off the bat, funny enough. And there we see the turn 2 Show and Tell from Niels Norlander off of Ancient Tomb. Let's see what it finds. A Sneak Attack. Sam has nothing to do as he is on the combo. And, well, looks like Niels is just passing a few times back here. Both players actually not doing too much in this initial stage. A Duress hitting another Sneak Attack. But then Sam starts going off. You see multiple Lotus Petals. Cabal Ritual. He has 5 black mana floating. Another Cabal Ritual. Infernal Tutor, sacrificing Lion's Eye Diamond in response, discarding in his hand. That way he's getting that Hellbent. He's going to search up for a card. What does it happen to be? Another Infernal Tutor, adding more Storm. Again, another Infernal Tutor. And there we have a large Tendrils. And that's going to finish off Niels in the first game between Sam and Niels playing Ad Nauseam Tendrils. The second game is already queued up here. This time, Niels is on the play. Turn 1 Ponder, not too exciting, but we'll see if he can do anything else. Preordain. Again, just setting up the turns as Sam wants to do as well. Duress, gonna meet a Flusterstorm. And this is where things start to go off. This is turn 3 for Niels Norlander. He's gonna cast Show and Tell. Does not look like Sam has an answer for that, and we have a Sneak Attack and an activation immediately on turn 3. Emrakul hits the battlefield, gonna make Sam exile, or sacrifice rather, both of his lands. But then, oddly enough, we have a few turns where it just keeps going back and forth. Neither player finding anything. Sam duressing Niels here, but Niels not having anything to do, even with that Sneak Attack. A few turns later, another Emrakul enters the battlefield, and Niels is going to take game 2. We're going to go to a game 3 between these players, and, well, you'll see what happens here. Again, the early stages of the game kind of just setting up, seeing what each player has. Gitaxian Pro from Sam's side, seeing what Niels has. And this is on turn 3. Sam, Lion's Eye Diamond into Dark Ritual, meets a Spell Pierce, but a Flusterstorm from Sam is going to counter that. And remember, because Sam used a Gitaxian Probe, he knows most of the cards in Niels' hand. Cabal Ritual, Infernal Tutor, again sacrificing the Lion's Eye Diamond in response to get that Hellbent. He finds Ad Nauseam. He gets a million cards, 11 cards up in his hand until he finds what he looks for. Dark Ritual, land, Cabal Ritual, another Lion's Eye Diamond, finds Past in Flames, discards his hand, gives everything flashback with the Past in Flames from the graveyard, and now our Storm count is actually 100. And Sam is going to take his match 2-1 over Niels Norlander. Let's throw it back to the booth after watching that exciting match.
All right, thank you, Kenji, from the Red Zone, a crazy stuff Storm deck. And that is going to do it for the first round of action here from the Magic Online Championship.